maintaining authenticity while using artificial intelligence as part of your marketing on today's special episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the bestseller ChatGPT Profits. This book is the missing instruction manual to get you up and running with ChatGPT in a matter of minutes. As a special gift, you can get it absolutely free at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift or at the link right below this episode. Make sure to grab your copy before it goes back up to full price. Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss, and start living your retirement dreams now, then you come to the right place. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where you will learn how to use artificial intelligence to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host. Now, I'm really excited to have you here, Emanuel, because this is the most common question I get from people, which is, how can I use AI without losing my voice? And my feeling is this, because most people's interpretation of using AI is I get AI to make the content for me. And that's what people think is the biggest AI use case. And when you do that, of course, it's going to start to lose your voice because you're replacing your voice with it. But as someone who really is focused on ethics and authenticity, how can people, what's a better answer for that question than the one that I've been giving people?
Yeah, the idea with AI is, it's a very powerful tool, and the leverage that it provides us as marketing professionals is phenomenal. But this question is super pertinent. And what I found to be the best way to start to manage that, you've got to have some content to point the GPTs at, right? So you don't want to just you don't want the AI to develop your content for you, because it'll just be bland and boring. We know this. It'll just basically take an average of all the content that's happened pre-2021 and push that out for you. So what I do is for instance, take and I attach my books to the platform, and then I reference my past work and get the answer to my past work. That's one solution.
So one thing that I notice as someone who uses AI a lot is there are certain words that ChatGPT or different AIs will use that are not normal words.
Yep.
And certain sentence structures that it uses all the time. Whenever I see a sentence structure with too many dependent clauses, I know it's an AI written sentence. If there's 3 subjects and 3 objects, if it says you, your friends, and your family are all experiencing A, B, and C, that's such a common AI written structure. It's a really big giveaway for me, as well as words like pondering, which it uses all the time for me, and landscape, which uses all the time for me.
Okay.
And I do know that for different people, it uses different words that are unnatural, but that some people never get landscape. They always get realm. I never get realm. They mean the same thing. And it will always say something like in the coming digital landscape. And what happens is if it's your first time seeing it, you don't realize that it's like a giveaway.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's as though you'd never heard a Russian accent before. So you don't realize that it's a Russian accent. So the first time I was in Europe, I met someone from Wales. I was like, wow, your accent is so elegant. But to English people, Welsh is a low accent. I was like, it sounds musical to me. I still love the Welsh accent. So there's such a temptation to use content because it's the first time using AI and the content doesn't sound bad. It's the first time it ever sounded almost human that we get so excited we start posting that content. And the problem with a push button solution is that anyone can push the button. So if there's no complexity in generating the content, then anyone can do it, which means our blog posts, our social media posts become a commodity. Anyone can hit that button. There's nothing that makes you special. So if someone wants to create content or to maintain their authenticity, this is what I always hear, like, how do I maintain my voice? What's the secret? So if they don't have existing content to train the AI's voice on, if they're just starting out, how do they maintain their voice? What are some techniques they can use?
Yeah, you've got 2 really interesting concepts there. One is, I agree, it's fascinating how many times the AI will put up a journey, for instance, like everything's a journey. Bespoke, which is obviously it's a British English word. It's not an American English word. And then also it is in the ever-changing digital landscape. That's another one that is just like constantly spitting out. I approach that issue by having conclusion where it's just like pay-per-click or SEO. So I traded to never use these terms. That's the first thing. Um, the second thing is I think that you have to create content. You have to have a voice. So even if it's a 90-second video about who you are and what uh, your career, your CV, and what you see the trends to be for the coming year, like that 90 seconds is a start, and it is enough to get initial push of content.
So I find that a lot of people use phrases like replace myself with AI. And these are the people who use it the worst because they will generate AI content. Mostly they think of AI as a content generator, not as any other type of tool. And they publish stuff they haven't read. And this is the reason my LinkedIn feed is so terrible. LinkedIn used to just be pictures of people at conferences I didn't want to go to, networking events that look uncomfortable, meetings at always the Hilton by the airport. It's whatever hotel it's the one by the airport. And now it's a lot of AI generated content that the problem I have is that it's lazy. So I don't mind AI generated content if it's good. Like I'll read an AI generated book if it's good. I don't care. And I'm an author, right? It doesn't matter to me. It's about the quality. And most people see, and the reason they're so worried about losing their voice, they go, well, everything I see written by AI is obviously written by AI because it's bad. And when I create content, one of the rules of thumb I have is that the content should be at least 51% you. So if I have an AI generated post, then I'll read it and rewrite it myself, and then I'll make a video from it. So the video is me. Or if I'll write the rough draft and say, take this 10 bullet points and turn it into a post. So It's either the first half or the second half is me. It's when you have it completely written by AI. And I've seen recently more and more people like how to get AI to automatically write all of your posts all the time. And you don't have to do anything. It completely automates your social media. And what happens when you do this is that it's the purpose of social media. There's a social element, right? The connection element. As soon as you completely move yourself from the equation, then it no longer is serving its purpose, right? You become a vampire who's living off of social media until people figure out what you're doing, right? And then they'll kick you off the system because it's like you're stealing electricity without the meter running. You're participating, but you're not giving back in the way that you're supposed to. So my biggest problem is that this type of training, this perspective is what's leading to all of these problems. So if you tell everyone this is the way to use it, people who see that go, I would never do that because my voice matters, my relationship with my customers matters. And you're guaranteed that it's going to post something that you wouldn't post. As soon as you give AI unfettered permission to post and you're not checking or maintaining, it's going to post something you regret. It's just a matter of when, not if. I feel like the problem is before the AI, it's the core mindset of, I want AI to do the work and I don't want to participate at any level. I just want it to do everything. I think that is a separate from the AI issue. It's the same thing as if you hired a VA to run your social media, I'm just never going to check anything. You're going to get the same type of surprise eventually once they realize, oh, he's not reading anything. So the quality will diminish. I've learned this myself. So from a core level, what's the right mindset about someone using AI? What's the right approach if it's not replace myself with AI?
You brought up an interesting point. It's this fundamental laziness in humans where we want to have the success without having to do the work, right? This is an old problem. The Chinese have a saying that says everybody wants to shoot the bow, but no one wants to pull the string. So we're in this new piece of technology, right? Where it's like everybody wants to be the influencer, to be the subject matter expert, but nobody wants to do the work. I wouldn't say nobody, but most people don't, right? So it's important. You have to go back to philosophy, what you believe our purpose on earth is, and I believe to create. And you're an author, taking the time to sit down and think about what your contribution could be, how you want to say things. Could be as simple as a blog post. That humanness in the blog post is the differentiator. So it's a philosophical perspective. To me, I believe that the highest use of AI right now is in editing and summarizing and repurposing content, right? Like I took a 3-day set of notes from a strategic planning session that I helped to run, and I was able to summarize that 3 days in the push of the button. Of course, it's about C- words like you're talking about, and then I have to go in clean it up and make sure that the hallucinations are skimmed out and that some of the things that I wanted to make sure were there. But it took what would typically be a 4 or 5 hour project and it turned it into a 15-minute project. That leverage is powerful. But the humans still had to produce the content in order to get the benefit of it.
Something really recently that's very interesting that happened is there's been a massive exodus of artists from Instagram because Instagram recently initiated a policy that says you can opt out of them using your art because people use Instagram for their portfolios to train the AI.
Yep.
And what happens is you fill out the form, they send you an email and goes, oh, none of your stuff is detected our AI, so we're not going to do anything. So it's actually a fake form, which enraged at least 100,000 people in the last 3 days before recording this have switched to a new platform called Kara, which the core central thesis is no AI generated images allowed. And the central idea is that there's a huge, and I believe this, as someone who creates images, I think there's a big difference between sitting down and drawing something by hand for 2 hours versus getting an AI generated image. I don't have a problem with AI generated images being known as AI generated. And I think that in the same way that like we consider sculpture and painting different art forms, we need to find a new definition for I generate AI images. It's not the same thing as, and it's fair enough if it's not even called an artist. It may need a different name because you're driving the AI and it falls into a different category. But there's this thing where creators look down on AI generated artists. And I think the reason for that is the element of deception. If you're creating AI generated art and you're honest about it, I don't think anyone gets upset. If you go, all my art's AI generated, this is AI generated, that's fine with me. And when I create AI generated art myself, which I do a lot of, I always aim to entertain. So for every one of my posts on LinkedIn or all of my header images or all my podcast images, it's always meant to not be realistic. It's never meant to make someone think, oh, that's a real photograph. So it's a picture of me riding a dinosaur on the moon. It's always going to that next level. Whereas if you think there's a point at which I go, hey, listen, if you think that's real, that's your fault. I'm not even wearing my kids saw the picture, but you're not wearing a helmet. And so even my 5-year-old goes, there's something wrong. I go, they detected something wrong, even though the dinosaur should have been the bigger giveaway. Cause I was like, oh yeah, that's before I met your mom. This is my last job. And they go, no, wait a minute. But I try to create that as my line of it's there. And there's one end of the spectrum where people are creating these amazing, super realistic images, which are very artistic and skillful, which are hard for me to recreate. And I love that. Yeah. The other end of the spectrum, there are people who are very lazy with their AI generated art. And I think both things cause different problems. Obviously, AI generated art just means it just looks like clip art. And so it's causing one problem. And the other end of the market where and this is what's cluttering, Etsy and a lot of other stores where suddenly all this AI generated art and AI generated prints is for sale. But it's a very gray area because you're selling something that you don't own, that nobody can own because you can't copyright an AI generated image. That's the current law.
Yeah.
When people are starting to create 2 tiers of perception, which is this is content created by a human and this is content created by someone who is using AI to deceive you. And for image generation, I have a strong opinion, which is you should just tell everyone you should create images that are non-realistic, that are very like MC Escher-esque. I like that stuff where you're going really creative. I don't really feel the need to mislead. And I think that's creating a negative perception of art, which is why artists are switching platforms. They're using tools to block AI from training on them, which I understand why they feel that way. Now, I'm someone who's a victim of this. So if you say, write like Jonathan Green at ChatGPT, will write in my style because it's imported my books. I didn't upload them in the training for ChatGPT 3.5, which got pulled into ChatGPT 4, which I'm sure is in 4.0. It goes, oh, I've read Jonathan's book. Here's his writing style. So the thing that you do manually, that's how I was originally trained the AI. And I found out I'm already in there. Anyone can do it, which means now my voice is a commodity. So my writing style, which my special unique sauce, is now out there. So I understand artists feeling the same way, which is, and my feeling is, can't put the genie back in the bottle. I can just adapt to it. There's no way I can sue them and make them take my voice out. It's like, that's never worked. It didn't work 30 years ago with musicians who didn't want their music online. And it's not going to work now. So I don't think you can push against the force of inevitability. But when it comes to written content, that's AI content, like I have to deal with the perception, especially as an AI person, that, oh, all of Jonathan's content is going to be AI generated. So I have to push against that and be like more authentic and over calibrate to go against that
Right.
to make it, no, this is really me, or these are all things that I'm doing and showing very clearly. Like in my book, whatever ChatGPT is writing, it's in italics. And if I'm prompting, it's in bold. I'm like, there's no way you don't know that's AI generated content because it's in italics.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are trying to use AI generated content. They don't want people to know. What do you feel is the right ethics about that and the right way to use that in your content creation? Is this the right place to be? Because eventually you're going to get caught. Always. Because AI detection always has a larger budget than AI creation.
That's what there's two things that you bring up that's interesting. One is I use a platform called Avia.ai, and it is secure and encrypted. So my content's not training the GPTs. And I think what you're describing is a bummer, and part of the wash of all this, right? Is we're figuring out how to manage these new tools. It's unfortunate, but there is a safeguard if you can get on one of these platforms that has encrypted connection with the GPT. So that's the first one. The other thing is that it does become a marketing avenue. So if you feed content to the GPTs purposefully, then you will be it's part like a big search engine, and eventually some things can get found that way. I think this idea of identifying AI generated content, I think is important. I think we're going to see the feds are going to be bringing legislation at some point to manage the deep faking that we know is possible. We'll have to have some kind of watermarks or some governing body. They will at some point get their arms around this to help manage it on the legal level. The images and all that stuff, I think, is way more complicated. I don't see a clear and simple path through that. I'll tell you that I do believe that the point of art is to trigger an emotional reaction. You described your kids having an emotional reaction to your dinosaur work. So at the fundamental level, whether it's an AI generated super realistic image or it's an illustration that looks like it's hand drawn, if it triggers an emotional reaction from somebody, then it's done its job, right? From my perspective, I don't have a hard and fast moral feeling about having to label anything that's been AI generated that's imagery, because if it doesn't impact people, it's going to be irrelevant fundamentally.
Yeah, I think my perspective, and I'm just working through this in my mind, is that I think of AI generation as a new medium. In the same way that if you take a photograph, you don't, and you say you painted it, that is a lie, but it's unnecessary because there's people that can take a picture I can't take. I've tried.
Sure.
Photography, it's so hard to think of it as an art until you try and take a picture and go, why does my picture look the same? I have the same lens and all that stuff. So I know there's that there. So that's my thought, is that it becomes a new medium and you just describe it that way. And the same, I painted that or AI generated that. And once we create that as the language, I think that mostly solves the problem. I don't think there's anything wrong with AI generated images. I just think there's wrong if you say, I painted that when you didn't. And I think that's why artists get upset, because maybe it's stolen valor or something. And they're like, I spent 10 years in art school and you spent 2 minutes. And I understand that feeling completely. And I also feel like whenever I see an artist create an AI generated image, it's always better than what I can do. There's always something about their spark, their ability. They can look at it and tweak things. They can do other things, or they'll take that image into Photoshop and tweak some stuff that I just can't do. So there's something else there. And I think that you're very right about the idea that the purpose of art is to create a reaction. So my biggest feeling is that people are so caught up in content generation, which is, in my opinion, the worst use case of AI. AI is so good at analyzing data. The biggest use I have first is organization. So sorting emails so I know which emails I should look at because I get so many. That's such a good use for it. Organizing and finding a missing file. It's great for that. Scan on my hard drive. Tell me where the file about this is. Or those are so useful compared to anything else, because everyone loses files all the time. I saw a study recently that said we spend like 20% of our time looking for missing files. I was like, that sounds about right for me. But I think that we get so caught up in this use case that's not very useful. The thing that's really helpful for me is when I'm running a paid advertising campaign. I was having a discussion with a friend the other day. He was running a paid ad campaign and he's, I said, change this and tell me how it works. He goes, it's still failing. I said, send me a screenshot of your stats. I am really bad at knowing which number you divide by the other to get a percentage. I always know it's one or the other. I can never remember which one's on top. So what I love to do is I'll send the screenshot to ChatGPT. Go, here's a screenshot, analyze these 2 ad campaigns. And the new ad campaign, well, it wasn't great. It was performing 3 times better. And I'll say, what percentage better is it? And it was still underperforming other stuff, but I was like, it has improved. Here's how much it's improved by. And that makes you sound really smart when you can give statistics. But
For sure.
I use it for that all the time. I'll look at 2 ad campaigns and sometimes you'll say, this one spent $120, this spent $70. And it's hard to for me to, just look at those by eye and tell if they're what the ROI is or what the cost per impression or cost per click is, and to see which part of the campaign's not working. So that part of data analysis, which I know falls into one of your areas of expertise, which I want to talk about next, is that it's so good at that. It's so good at the objective stuff, which is analyzing that. That's really helpful to me. And that's why I find it's always fast. It's super accurate. It helps me with data analysis. So I can send a screenshot of, here's my analytics for the last month. What are my opportunities? Like, what are things that could be doing better? And what's the content that nobody likes? Stop doing that and use that as something else. Use that time to something else. Like, it can give you that analysis, which is very hard to do because when you look at your own social media posts, you go, this one didn't get as many clicks, but I liked it more. It gets affected by your emotional reaction. So what's your approach to using AI as far as data analysis, as far as paid advertisement, as far as that part of a business?
Well, yeah, when you think about it, that's the highest and best use, right? That's what the computer is able to churn, software is able to churn that data, push output way quicker and way faster than somebody like me, a philosopher and a content creator. So, that's, I think, the highest and best use. And I think we're going to see a blend coming, even just in this conversation. If you were to take that use case and then you say, why is this one performing better? And generate 15 ads that will take advantage of the areas that's performing better. And then when it's all connected up, then the machines are starting to run and you're not having to do any of the input. So we're in the middle of this flow and we're having these opinions, assessments, and we're trying to figure out how to use this tool. But the math and the assessment, the analytics of raw data, huge amounts of data, is really the phenomenon that it's its best use.
There's this really common mistake people are making, which is to trust without verifying. And I'll give you a really specific example, something I run into all the time. I have to, when I'm setting up integrations or connecting to things, I always have to convert stuff into UTC time zones when I'm connecting to things, and I never know how to fill that in. I used to have to do it manually. It would take me forever. So I'll say, here's the date, convert it to this format. And ChatGPT almost always messes up the date by one day. So I'll connect it, it'll go, there's nothing found there. And I have to go back and look. So even at that simplest level, there's a mistake there. And we've seen with Google's AI, it happens all the time. It's always got something going on. So that's why I don't use their AI tools, because they just keep dropping the ball. But it's the same thing about, you're not in college, you're not supposed to use Wikipedia as a source because it's not a real source, because there's no one name behind the article. It's anonymous. We have this thing happening now, which is that we just get content. I'll give you a very specific example. I was trying to look up when Next was acquired by Apple, which Next was the Steve Jobs company, started in 1985 after they fired him, whatever, or he left. Who knows what really happened? It's murky, but I got 3 different dates from Perplexity and from ChatGPT. I was like, which one's the real one? And then you go to the source. And I was like, the source they're using is Wikipedia.
Right.
Wait a minute. So even something as simple as that, you have to go a couple of layers deeper to find out. So what do you think about, what's the right process, or the process you use for trust but verify? It's the best way that I can say it.
I think that's, again, it's a fundamental behavior of a professional, right? That if I'm going to publish something with my name on it, even if it's just a blog post or an Instagram post, I want it to be accurate. And there's some commands around when I write a prompt for the GPT, and it'll say, do you understand what I'm asking you to do? And then that way, at least there's a double check in that system. And then always to ask to cite the sources is the other thing, so that you can click through that link and get in there and double check that it's an actual thing, because that, especially chat, I think the hallucination on case studies, and when I've tried to get examples of things, it makes it up. It's summarizing some stuff, and it's not even a real company. You have to dig into it in order to be accurate.
What do you think is the biggest mistake people are making, like new users of AI or intermediate users of AI? What are they really messing up right now?
I think they don't have a plan, right? Like now, you and I have been using these tools enough. It's like I need a video editing tool that can take an hour's worth of video and make clips. So I know that's the outcome that I need to do. So then there's a number of different websites that list the variety of tools. I can go in there, I can go to the video section, look for the clipping software, try 3 of them, and then implement them. I know that prompt writing is probably the most important thing with generative AI right now. That I've got to be able to ask specifically for what I want out of it. And I don't have a prompt writing brain, so I get help to write the prompts or to get feedback on prompts before we even get into the act of generating content. So it's really about that clarity about what am I going to use it for? What's the outcome I want to produce? And how am I going to trigger this machine that is not a human? It's amazing and it's cool, but there's a structure that I have to work within in order to get the best output in the most efficient time.
You brought up something I think is really important, which is that a lot of times people treat AI like a hammer and now they're in search of a nail. So they're like, oh, I have this tool. Now I have to find a problem for it to solve, because it doesn't solve every problem and work in every use case, but this desire to use it. And we're seeing this, like a lot of companies are like, oh, I have to use AI. Why? What do you need it for? Same thing happened 20 years ago when everyone's like, I need a MySpace page, then I need a website, then I need a social media site, then I need an SMS website. Or I still meet people who say that they need a Web3 website. And I always say this thing, what is that? I don't know. I've never put on, not since the 1990s when you could rent virtual reality goggles for 3 minutes, have I put on one of those headsets. So I don't know that how's a virtual reality website different from a regular website? I still don't know. No one can ever explain it to me, but everyone's still saying that. So I feel like there's this desire to use it because it's trendy, but you're not sure if there's use case. So I think that's exactly what you're saying. I think that's very good, which is that figure out the planning first. And people are always surprised that I'm so analog. Everything I do is written in notebooks. Like even when I'm creating an AI and automation structure, I write it down in notebooks with different colors to plan it out, because it's the most important part. The planning is more important because that's where things collapse. If you have a mistake in the plan or a missing step, that's where things fall apart. And I think it's really important for people to think about that step you mentioned, which is, okay, what's the problem I'm solving? Then what's the right way to solve it, which is then you look for the tool. But right now, a lot of people are grabbing the tool first and then looking for the problem to solve. And that always leads to, I better hammer it since I'm holding a hammer.
It is a bubble like all the other bubbles we've had since in the recent time, and it's getting a lot of attention, and it is phenomenal and super interesting and amazing ability to generate all this content and use it for video, take the video and make a transcript, turn the transcript into another video that's a different type of video, and being able to call and use a voice AI to answer the phone. Things are all amazing. It's all the stuff we've seen about in the movies and TV shows since the 50s. So I love the enthusiasm of that. And that's the inspiration. But if you're going to use it and have it make you money or save you time or actually be the asset that it could be, then yeah, you got to spend a little bit of time to understand the milieu which exists in, and either learn how to do it yourself or get some good help to help you use it for best use case.
Well, I think that's really useful. I think people are really going to enjoy this episode. And for people who want to connect with you, see some of the books you've written, see more of your content, what's the best place to find you online and see all the amazing things that you're doing about maintaining authenticity and using AI the right way?
My website's emmanuelrose.com or strategicemarketing.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, and the books are available on Amazon.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes and below the video on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here for another amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Starting with AI can be scary. ChatGPT Profits is not only a bestseller, but also the missing instruction manual to make mastering ChatGPT a breeze. Bypass the hard stuff and get straight to success with ChatGPT Profits. As always, I would love for you to support the show by paying full price on Amazon. But you can get it absolutely free for a limited time at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and tactics on how to leverage AI to escape that rat race. Head over to artificialintelligencepod.com now to see past episodes, leave a review, and check out all of our socials.